Welcome back to part 2. If you have not watched part 1, I strongly recommend starting there first. In order for any of this to make sense, we must follow the rules of regulation. Link to part 1 is in the pinned comment and description below. Let's jump into part 2 as we deep dive into this video.
Texas is not a stop and ID state, is it?
Guys, go ahead and frisk this gentleman. Make sure that he doesn't have any weapons on him.
I have no weapons and I do not consent to
Go ahead and
searches.
frisk him like I said. Make sure he has no weapons on him.
I don't consent to searches.
He can either provide us his information willingly, or we can do it through the ID section downtown.
Under what gives you the authority to do that?
Go ahead and get this done, guys. I'm not going to argue with this guy.
You're violating my 4th Amendment. You know that, right?
Stand up. You do what you need to do, and we'll do what we need to do, buddy.
Notice how Officer Shirley doesn't bother answering my questions. The questions I'm asking requires actual knowledge of the law and policies of APD. I intentionally repeat questions to see if the officers will double down or say something stupid, the same technique used by officers when they interrogate suspects. At this point, I'm not sure if these officers seen audit videos on YouTube, but the ringleader of this circus makes it very clear shortly.
You have anything on you that we need to know about? Knives, guns, weapons?
I have nothing. I'm just holding my hands up.
Put your hands back behind you. You can put the camera down and film us while we're doing this if you want to.
Am I under arrest? That's what I'm asking.
You're being detained. And during the detention, you can be frisked for safety.
If he won't put it down, handcuff him.
Here, I'll put my hands right here. Is that fine?
If he won't do it willingly, handcuff him.
Put your hands behind your back for us.
There we go. Put your hands behind your back.
Come back here.
There we go.
You're not being handcuffed.
I know
right
you're used to this going one way based on the YouTube education you've gotten, but that's not how we do it, okay? We're going to do this according to our policy and according to law.
It's a public area, sir.
Okay, that's fine.
I asked multiple times if I was being arrested, which is key, and a few officers stated that I was not. Texas Penal Code 3802 makes it clear when an individual has to identify themselves, which we will take a look at shortly. If you're in a position that requires your hands being restrained, or if you're being patted down or searched, try to offer to set the camera down in a prime position to capture the search. I have done this numerous times and it worked out very well.
Cell phone?
Yep.
You have a wallet on you? An ID at all?
I'm not answering any more questions unless I'm being under arrest.
You're being detained, which means you...
If he has an ID, we have every right to we have every right to look at it. It's not an issue, guys.
Look, come on the back of you. There.
Yeah. Set it right here so it doesn't interfere with your camera, okay? You're filming this, and so are we. So we have two separate angles. You're good to go.
Relax.
Am I good?
You don't have an ID on you, so what's your... Let me get pen and paper here. You from Austin originally?
I'm not answering any questions.
ID is like crack to an ignorant, uneducated officer. They just have to have it. They need their fix. If they don't get their way, it's highly possible they become more aggressive in their approach and resort to show me your papers Nazi-like behavior. These officers were supposed to frisk me, which is considered a pat-down, but Officer Smith decides to go into my pockets to retrieve my ID, which is a violation of my 4th Amendment right. There was no probable cause for the search, and consent was not given, nor was I arrested. Unfortunately for them, I don't carry ID on audits.
When you're stopped by reasonable suspicion by peace officers in the state of Texas...
Can I sit here?
No, you can stand there for a second until we're finished. When you're stopped by police officers in the state of Texas for reasonable suspicion, you're required to give minimal identifying information, that being your name and your date of birth. So we'll start there.
Well, what penal code is that?
I'm not going to argue with you.
I'm just asking.
If he doesn't want to do it, go ahead and put him in handcuffs, and we can do it until we find him on the system. That's the way it goes. Suspicious people, suspicious places, suspicious circumstances. The Code of Criminal Procedure gives us that authority. I've been doing this a lot longer than you've been doing that. So we can go one way or the other. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to get in a debate with you. I know that this makes great fodder on YouTube. I know that it's wonderful to post your videos, and it seems like, oh my God, the sky's crashing down, Big Brother and all that. But we're simply trying to do our jobs. We're going to do that with or without your cooperation. So how we proceed from here is 100% up to you. How do you want to do it?
Here comes the demand and attempt to instill fear in me for not obeying their authority. I knew Officer Shirley was either lying or just completely drunk and ignorant from his 10 badge and gun. Texas Penal Code 3802 makes it clear when you have to give identification in Texas. A person commits an offense if he intentionally refuses to give his name, residence address, or date of birth to a peace officer who has lawfully arrested the person and requested the information. A person commits an offense if he intentionally gives a false or fictitious name, residence address, or date of birth to a peace officer who has lawfully arrested the person, lawfully detained a person, or requested the information from a person that the peace officer has good cause to believe is a witness to a criminal offense. Not many people are willing to challenge officers or may not know their rights. This is why it's important to understand and heavily educate yourself on the laws of your state. Keep in mind this will vary depending on the situation if you're trying to avoid being arrested. Traffic and pedestrian violations are different. When receiving a citation, it's best to give identification. For example, if you're pulled over for a traffic violation, the driver must ID. The passengers don't have to ID unless they aren't wearing seatbelts or committing another violation. I decided to make a stand here because I knew for a fact this detention would not hold up in court.
Am I doing anything wrong? It's just a question. It's just a question.
Set that down.
Yeah.
I know this isn't going
Now
the way
you're
you thought
violating
it
my
was
First
gonna go.
Amendment right.
I know it's not the way you thought it was going to
This
go.
is not how it's supposed to go.
Okay, don't
You
fight
can
this.
either put the camera down or we'll take it from you. Now, you want me to make sure it's filming? I'll fix the screen so you can see. Does that work for you? I noticed you didn't want to talk or answer questions unless it was asking questions of us. I found that to be especially
Well,
interesting.
you're arresting me, right?
No, you're not under arrest. You're being detained.
Detained.
Investigatively detained.
You wanna
If you'd like,
identify
I can
yourself?
explain the difference to you.
Texas is not a stop and ID state.
Okay, thanks for telling me the law. Now let me tell you what's going to happen. We're going to detain you until we have been able to properly identify you. If we're able to properly identify you and there's no warrants or any other reason to hold you, we'll cut you loose, as is our prerogative, as is held by the state of Texas law, the United States Constitution, and, by the way, Austin Police Department policy and procedures. Now, how we proceed, again, I'm going to put it to you. It's up to you. You can either willingly give us your name and date of birth, or you can continue to take this stand that you're taking, which will do you no good other than delaying your freedom to go. So tell me again, do you want to give us your name and date of birth, or do you want us to detain you further until we can specifically identify you and make sure that there is nothing more to this than what meets the eye?
Am I under arrest?
You are being detained. Okay. I've said it again. If you want me to get closer to the camera so I could say it into the speaker, I'll do that. However, I think it's been made clear to you that you're being detained for investigative purposes. You will not be released until we can positively identify you.
Check and mate. This is why I asked some questions multiple times and let officers cop-splain. It's almost like getting a confession in an unofficial deposition. You give them a shovel and let them dig themselves a hole. However, I do think there are some good officers out there who are educated and smart enough to realize that there was no reasonable suspicion of a crime and a detention was not warranted. However, an investigative detention is a bit different. This usually happens when an officer has a reasonable suspicion that a crime is about to be committed or has already been committed. Knowing for a fact that I was well within APD policy and Texas law, the likelihood of them finding a real crime is 0%. Knowing this, I wanted to see just how far they will go with their unlawful actions.
Does that sound like it's clear now? Whether you agree with it or not, are you understanding what I'm saying to you?
You should be familiar with Penal Code 3802. You should be familiar with that.
I appreciate you telling me what I should and should not do.
Okay.
But here's
But
what
based on
we're
that,
going
then
to do.
I'm going to follow
Have him
that.
sit in the back of the car, and let's go ahead and figure out who he is. Once we do that, we'll go from there.
Step over here.
Here, take his camera. Make sure he keeps that with him.
Can I hold on to it or no? No.
No, we're going to go ahead and hold on to it. It's still filming.
This
Yeah,
car
and
is
you'll
filming?
be filmed in the car as well. You want me to film exactly this? Nope. No, we're going to keep you. We're going to put you in air-conditioned comfort. No, actually, you're actually dictating how we treat you at this point. If you would like to leave, just tell us your name, date of birth. We'll make sure that you don't have any wants or warrants. We'll make sure that there's no other suspicious activity we need to investigate, and you'll be free to go. If you want to play this out and make a statement, you can go ahead and do that. It's just going to delay you being able to leave freely. All right, there we go.
Freedom.
You take me down?
Okay, two things here. One, I wasn't expecting them to double down on their bluff, or maybe it wasn't a bluff, and these guys are actually serious. They actually think they can detain and ID me based on suspicious activity alone. We already know that APD policy has outlined that this activity is not suspicious, and I tried to give them a hint about 3802 and they didn't listen, and our hole just turned into a crater. Oh well, since I'm in a car already, might as well see how far this goes. And two, I can't believe they're using my camera to record this for me. I guess there are some elements to recording in public these officers won't violate. This concludes part 2. Be sure to like and share as the third and final part will be uploaded shortly.